Hi, it's Bruce Balmer from Total Fluency, the accelerated language learning company. Many of you will have made a New Year's resolution to learn a foreign language at last. I've made a New Year's resolution of my own concerning language learning.
My New Year's resolution is to do more of my learning and reviews from the pool.
If success is important to you, don't just jump into a language program. Here are the things that you should do first. The most important thing you can do, and the thing that was lacking for me for years of language learning, is to understand the numbers. So here they are. I've written a table for you. I recommend you go through it with me now, quickly, but come back at the end of the video, freeze frame it, and just understand these numbers well. So firstly, there are different levels that you can get to. Just enough to make friends in a country, functional fluency, conversational fluency, and so forth. Levels here, the A1, A2, B1, B2, are internationally recognized standards of ability. I've written a column for you that says roughly what that means. Now, in language learning, which they call an art, not a science, although you can apply a lot of science to it, no number can really be completely precise. It's different for different people, but roughly these levels are right and the numbers are right. So the next column is fluency units. This is how many fluency units you need to know to reach each of these levels. Now, what is a fluency unit? It's a term we coined, which means either a word, which is a unit of fluency, house, dog, cat. It could be a verb, a descriptor, it doesn't matter. A short phrase that illustrates a grammar rule or how the people in that country go about phrasing a sentence. Or it can be an idiom. So you need, for instance, to reach the A2 level, 2,400 fluency units with about a 2,000 word vocabulary and 400 fluency units concerning other things. Now, if you want to know how many hours it's going to take you to reach a certain level, the best place to start is to look at the courses provided by language teaching schools and say, well, they've had a lot of experience, they've done this for years. How long does it take people? So I've written down the numbers there in the column normal hours, and what you can see is the classroom time. They also recommend that you do the same amount again of individual homework, but even just the classroom time to get to, say, A2, which is the level most people mean when they talk about being able to learn a language, is 300 hours. Now, just thinking about that, do you have 300 hours to put into language learning? It's a lot of time. If you learn 6 days a week, that's an hour a day for a year. If you're not going to reach that goal, you need to either set a different goal or you need to not start at all. And lots of people who want to sell you some language learning courses will not share this information with you because they don't want you to realize how much time it would take. We would rather that our clients only start if they feel they'll be able to succeed. Yes, you can do things better. So using accelerated language learning techniques, the next column is how long it would most likely take you if you used a sort of a total fluency approach or other similar approaches. The final number that you really need to know is that for most people, in most circumstances, trying to exceed progressing at 10 fluency units a day is a recipe for disaster. For various reasons, it will prove too difficult for most people. That's been our experience. Interestingly, university courses are based on 5, a net progress rate of 5 a day, which is a bit of a shock. So now we can do a simple thing. If you will take my word for it that you shouldn't set a goal of more than 10 fluency units a day, we can divide the fluency units that you need for the level that you want. Just do A2 again, 2,400, we divide it by 10, it's going to take you 240 days at least. Now that's 8 months. And so your next question is, can I sustain my motivation for 8 months? Do I want to commit 8 months to it? If not, maybe it's not worth starting. If you can do the 8 months, you now have a reasonable expectation, which is very important for success. If you want to succeed at learning a language, get as excited about making a good plan as you are about learning the language. Now, the military have spent a lot of time over hundreds of years working out how to be efficient and effective in complicated situations. And they've become huge fans of planning. Let me give you 3 things the military say. Number 1, that time spent in reconnaissance is seldom wasted. Look around, don't jump straight in with the first book, the first teacher, the first course you see. Have a look around. There may be factors you have not yet considered. Secondly, if you'll pardon the Army's blunt way of speaking, prior preparation and planning prevents piss poor performance, called the 7 Ps. What they found from experience is that if you don't arrive with a plan, there's going to be a mess sooner or later. And I would say that most of the people that I've spoken to who've tried to learn a language and then not succeeded have not had any sort of quality plan to their actions. Thirdly, the Army says that you should spend 10% of your time in planning and 90% in doing. And if you do that, you will get to the goal more probably and more quickly. If you were going to take a year to learn a language, which I think is a nice balance for most people, if you were going to do that, that's 365 days. That would give you 36 days of planning. So don't feel that you've got to rush in. January could be not get started. January could be working out how to get started right. So sadly, I don't have the statistics, but being in the language business, I end up in a lot of conversations with people about language learning. Most of those conversations are about people who've tried and then quit. It's not the easiest thing in the world to do, to learn a language. And if you want to increase your odds of success from day one, set goals and set SMART goals. Now this is so important and a big enough topic. I'm making a separate video on it. That'll be my next video in a few days' time. Set SMART goals and your odds of success will have increased straight away. Get a buddy. I've learnt languages on my own and I've learnt them with a buddy, and learning with a buddy is incomparably better. I'll give you 3 reasons why. Number 1, over such a long period of time you're going to have good days and you're going to have bad days. And on the bad days, hopefully your buddy is not also having a bad day and they can cheer you up and you could do the same for them the next day. So that's one thing, simple. You get confused about different things and you find different things simple. And that means that you can help each other, and that is like free private tuition. It's more emotionally rewarding. It's just more fun to have somebody to share that journey with, speak to each other in the language and so on. Get a buddy, because anything that makes your language learning more fun is going to help you sustain your motivation, and sustained motivation is the biggest challenge of language learning. Know your purpose. Now, most people, when they say, I'd like to be able to speak a language, what they mean is go and sit at a pub with a pint of beer and have an everyday conversation about life with somebody and enjoy that conversation. What they do not mean is that they wish to be able to decline verbs correctly, use the subjunctive whenever required, report reported speech in the correct way for that language. They don't mean that. I spend a lot of time abroad. I'm always speaking with people whose native language is not English, and they make little grammatical mistakes all the time, and I just don't care. I'm interested in them. I'm interested in what they want to tell me. I'm not interested in the mechanics of how they tell me, and it's the same for me when I'm speaking their languages too. So exam courses are great if you want to do an exam course, but understand that they've sort of hijacked language learning and turned it into an exercise in grammatical precision. Now, many of the people who quit learning a language is because they get bogged down in grammar and it makes them more and more miserable, and in their heart they're thinking, honestly, is it necessary that I get all of this exactly right? So if you want to do an exam course, do an exam course. If you simply want to be fluent in the language, understand that exam courses are not necessarily the best way to go about that. We can take a different journey. We can get to the point where we can pass the exams. I've done that myself, but I've taken a different path that is more rewarding and focuses more on actual speaking ability, and eventually the grammatical precision catches up a little later. Have fun. It isn't difficult to learn a language, it's difficult not to learn a language. I'll prove that to you. I'm going to say a word in Swahili, which you probably don't know. It's the word for elephant. Now, right now you don't know the Swahili word for it, and if in a second you do know that, then clearly you've learned it. What I want you to do, this is like a magic trick, I want you to try not to learn the word, but you have to listen to me, okay? It's Ndovu. Now, if I ask you what's the Swahili for elephant, you know what it is, Ndovu. You cannot not learn language. It's not difficult. Our brains are wired to do this job. What is difficult is sustaining your motivation over an extended period. And the secret to that is having fun. Focus on the positive. You're going to get some things wrong, you're going to get some things right. The trick is to notice more what you get right than what you get wrong. Chances are you're getting more right than you're getting wrong. You just need to observe that. Make sure that you see progress by having a good tracking system in place. It's normal when language learning that you will have periods when you think you're not getting any better, but you're very aware of the work you're putting in. Sometimes you may even feel you're getting worse, and you know that you've put in a lot more work. This is a very discouraging moment unless you have good tracking. If you have good tracking, you can see that in reality you are still improving. That will make a big difference. That will insulate you against despair. Third thing, get books. Get books in the language. Get movies, start watching movies with the subtitles on so that you can get some success early on. Get a buddy. Talk with a national of that language. I can talk to English people in German till I'm blue in the face. It doesn't have the impact on me as actually talking to a real German and realizing that I'm really communicating with that person. And remember to celebrate everything you get right and ignore most of what you get wrong. Don't use a classroom unless you have to. Let me explain. Classrooms are really best for people with weak motivation, limited motivation, where they need somebody externally organizing them, planning for them, and sort of cajoling them into continuing on and doing the homework. Now, if you are a motivated and disciplined individual, then you don't need that. And if you don't need that, then in almost every way, learning on your own is superior. So here are just some of those ways. First one isn't superior, they're equal, is that many people go through a classroom because they want a certificate at the end. The European Union has very kindly created a certification program that does not rely upon you going through a course. You can just turn up, as I have done, sit an exam, pass the exam, and receive your certificate. Support. You would think classrooms were a great place to get support, but actually classrooms cost money for the teacher, the building, the administration, etc., etc. If you take the same money that you will spend on getting to A2 in a classroom situation and you spend it privately on books, videos, and private tuition, private coaching, then you can get much better support than you will in a classroom. A great example of that is that I've had different teachers in my life who are good at explaining different things. So here's a wild idea. If you're learning for yourself, you can have 2 teachers if you want and decide which one you think will explain a topic better, or maybe you try with one, it wasn't that clear, you can go to the other one. Speed. The Africans have a saying, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go with a buddy. So that's the idea of a language buddy, is we want to go far, but you want to keep that number down to as close to 1 as you can for speed. Now, why do we go faster if we're learning alone? Lots of reasons. Number 1, we're only spending time on what I get confused about. If I learn verbs more quickly than you, but I learn the grammar more slowly, I can speed through the verbs and then I can spend the extra time on vocabulary. I'm not having to follow the average speed of the people in a room. So if I'm above average speed of learning, then I can go faster. If I'm slower than average, I'm still going faster than I would have done by concentrating only on my problems and getting my one-to-one tuition, which again is only taking time with what I find hard. Resources. So my dad was a self-educated man and he taught me a couple of really great tricks. Number 1, he said, if you find a book confusing, throw it in the bin. It isn't you, it's probably a badly written book. Great, and it's difficult to fit a teacher in a bin. Secondly, he said, don't buy 1 book. If you want to learn a subject, buy 3 books. Every book will explain some things well and some things kind of medium and some things not so well. And so don't limit yourself that way. Get 3 different books, get 3 different videos, get 3 different teachers, and go to each one, and if you're not getting the right answer from one, go to the next one before you move on. That's usually something you can't do in a classroom situation because schools are constrained by budgets. They can't provide the sort of breadth of material you can provide for yourself. Probability of success. Life is a marathon, not a sprint. Imagine that you learn 10% slower than the average for your classroom. After 1 month, you're a bit confused. After 3 months, you're well confused. After 6 months, you're very confused. Eventually, you will give up because it's too painful, or you'll take the exam and fail because you're confused. Either way, not a good situation. Now, suppose that you said, oh, I have identified that I'm 10% slower than my class. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to give myself 10% more time. Well, you can't do that in a classroom, but you can do that if you're teaching yourself. So you say, okay, the average person takes 12 months to do this. I'm going to take 13 months. I'm going to give myself that extra time. Now, at the end of the 13 months, the people who did it in 12 months speak German, let's say, and after 13 months, you speak German. What's the difference? There's no difference. It just took you a little bit longer. So one great advantage of going at your own pace is your probability of success rises. Accelerated learning tends to be of most interest to successful people who are generally short of time. I personally try to get as close to 100% time efficiency with my learning as I can. I can usually complete 1 day of my learning in the same time it takes most students to get to a classroom and get from a classroom. So this is one of the advantages of learning on your own. I can waste no time on organizational and moving about. I can do this in a car. I can do it when I'm waiting for my meal to be delivered at a restaurant. Whatever the circumstances that's suitable, I can grab a few quick minutes and make them work. Freedom of operation. So in a classroom, I have to sit in the class, probably have clothes on, use the books they want, listen to the teacher they want, on the day they want, at the time they want, and this may not suit me for various reasons at that moment. If I'm studying on my own, I can be studying here at this desk now, or I could be studying in the pool.
So this freedom of operation allows me to learn and review from the pool, which I think is a nicer environment than a classroom. Now, I'm very keen that I'm relaxed and I'm happy when I'm learning, and so this is, for me, part of a sensible, intelligent learning strategy.
Finally, lesson duration. Now, when I was at school, they used to have a mixture of lessons, basically 40 minutes or 80 minutes long, but I've met schools that had 35-minute lessons, 50-minute lessons, 70-minute lessons, and so on. Clearly, this number is not based on what is best from a learning point of view. It's what is most convenient to the school, moving people around, planning for teachers, and so forth. We would never recommend that a person does a 40-minute lesson as a standard thing. I do them sometimes, but I only do that when I'm having a very good day and I'm in a very good mood and I'm finding things very easy. Now, some days I'm having a terrible day and everything's wrong, and then I will even cut my lessons down to 2 minutes and maybe complete 10 2-minute lessons in a day because I can't get grumpy in 2 minutes. Generally, we recommend people don't exceed 15 minutes, and we do recommend that you're able to vary that duration depending on how fatigued you are, what a good mood you're in, how hard that particular material is, and so forth. Okay, so I hope that's given you a series of good ideas for what you should do before you begin learning a language. I'll see you next week when I'll be making a video on SMART goals specifically and looking at that in a bit more depth. See you next week.